Hi, Antonio.
Hi, Laura.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. How are you?
I'm good. You know what? Turtle and I, we were looking forward to this and we thought it was going to be in the evening. And then I just saw like, I'm about to start in 45 minutes and I'm at work. So I'm kind of double shifting it right now. But I really wanted to see you guys' face and I wanted to see what this is about. The last one that Minnie had with Mona, it was really inspiring. She asked a lot of great questions and man, that lady's just full of knowledge. And it was an awesome meeting. So I was like, okay, let's see what Antonio has in store for us with the talking circle. But you know what, I say it that way, but you know what, let me tell you something. I really think that we're in a point of our in life where talking circles are very essential, especially for people that conduct and are part of ceremony, because I really believe that talking circles is like the maintenance phase for everybody. So I'm excited to see what your perspective of a talking circle is and how it differs from others that I witness or from other people that I know that conduct talking circles, you know. And it could just be dialogue, but we call it talking circle and then it becomes a ceremony, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, so looking forward to it. Thank you, Minnie, for putting this together. I'm gonna try to stick around as much as I can, but if I leave, just know that it's because I'm at work and I have to go get paid. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate that you liked the last one. Definitely Mona is someone who I feel is just someone who I've always gone to for advice, and similar to Antonio. When they asked me to teach this class, Traditional Indian Medicines 405, I kind of felt like a little hesitant because I'm just barely learning. And I know that they don't equate like ceremonial ways with academic ways. And I know that from experience, you know, you can have this much academia, but if you don't have like this much native knowledge, then you're always going to be kind of out of balance. So I look at this class like as a way for me to kind of grow that Indigenous knowledge. And I don't think that a lot of the knowledge that we can gain can be found in a book or from people who studied in libraries. I think that a lot of the knowledge comes from people who have been in ceremonies, have been, you know, doing all the groundwork, and really reconnecting with the earth and with all of our traditional teachings. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, this, like I said, this was a Traditional Indian Medicines class. It's sponsored through the Mexican American Studies at the University of Arizona. I'm the teacher, Melissa Michelle Pepion. I represent the Navajo and Blackfeet Nations. We are going to be discussing the topic of air this week, how air holds knowledge, why ceremonies are important, why it's important for us to continue to practice our ways, not just study them out of books. And for that, I couldn't think of a better teacher than you. You're like definitely, Antonio has showed me a lot about who I am and how I can learn more about who I am through connecting through the fire and through medicines. And so I'm really looking forward to our talk today. If you just want to go ahead and share your background, your name, your your story about how you came to the fire and why you think it's important, and anything else of importance. And then I have some backup questions to ask afterwards, but the floor is yours. So this is Antonio Carrasco.
Hello, everyone. Those of you who are listening, my name is Antonio Yanez Carrasco III. I'm not sure if any of you on this panel know my sister, or Guadalupe. I know a few people on that joined a while ago that do know my sister. So my story is very unique in the sense of I'm Chicano at first, and I got green eyes. I'm kind of light complected. Both of my grandfathers were both orphans who have European blood, so there's like no lineage, recorded, and and vice versa, of like some far away, marriage that when it happened, it was pretty much like incest and rape. That's how I got the European blood. And then I have on my mother's side, my mother's mom, my grandmother, her name was Avelia, and then she was born in Valentine, Texas, and she was Choahuilteo. And then from she only had like a third grade education because she was really dark, really morena, and at that time he was working the fields or find some other work. So and then and her lineage is Texas, is Tejano from when it was Mexico. So my mother's father, his name was Jacobo, and then he was from Chihuahua, and he was a migrant field worker. So that's my mom's side. So both my mom and then they were migrant field workers, and then they ended up to Salinas in California, and they ended up then my mother, she was my grandfather kidnapped my mother and my two tias and my two tios and took them to work in the fields and to Mexico. She was victimized at church, and she was an orphan for a while in the foster homes and things like that. And she was to work in the fields until she was 18 years old, picking cotton. She was only allowed to have one shower a week, in the fields. And then they ended up moving to New Mexico, to Carlsbad. So that's my mother's side. And then my father's side, my grandmother, Guadalupe, she's from Mexico. She's from Chihuahua. And then she got married to my grandfather, Antonio, which is the first Antonio. I'm the third. And then he was born in Pecos, Texas. And even though he was like complected with blue eyes, he never knew English. So two of my grandparents who were born in Texas never knew English. And all of on my father's side, they ended up, my father was born in Carlsbad, New Mexico. And then and they ended up working in the fields. They migrated to the San Joaquin Valley. So they ended up working in the fields, and that's where two of my grandparents, my dad's parents, are buried in Fresno. And then, so after my dad graduated high school, and he went to Berkeley and what have you, and then he dropped out of Berkeley. And then he moved back to New Mexico, and that's where my mom and my dad met. So even though I have roots in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and that region, and all of my grandparents have roots in the border of Texas and Juarez and they're in Chihuahua. That's where the roots of the Choahuiltecos come from, because the root word of Choahuilteco is Cahuila, and then it's the serpent of the snake. That's the root of the word, the Choahuilteco, right? So you have all these rivers there, the Black River, the Pecos rivers. So that being said, my father and my mother, they were like extremely hardcore activists. My father, he started his own church, his own clinic. He was a Kellogg fellow. So they're really at a really small age, it was programmed in us really, really like very, very at a very young age of like activism, hard work, working in the fields, and then but at the same time, on an honest note, it was we're Chicanos, we're natives, we're Mexicans, but we're not white. We're not white because we used to get discriminated against. And then my father was raised in a little adobe home that his father built. So at a very young age, my father, he would go to sweat lodges and this and that, and on the reservations, and he would get run out. They would kick him out, and they would say, "Oh, we don't want no white people here. We don't want no Mexicans here," and vice versa. So my dad had a hard time dealing with that. Because he's like, "What? Like, like, nah. Like, this blood I have in me, it was by force. Number one, and those are the people that were racist towards us, and you're categorizing me in this in that category." So little by little, my dad started going to Sundance, started going to sweat lodges, and he would bring my sisters and my siblings along with us. So at a very young age. So what happens is that you could say I was raised in ceremony, raised in peyote, which show ceremonies. I was raised at Sundance. And then when I was 18 years old, my father, he was one of the organizers of the Peace and Dignity Run, and then so they're in the valley, they're in Phoenix with Donatierra, and then behind the scenes elders. So what happens is that all these elders would be getting, at our house, and my dad was one of the founders of La Tierra and this and that. So, I at the same day I graduated high school from South Mountain High School there in Phoenix. Then I went running all the way. I joined the Peace and Dignity Run in the middle of Canada, and I ran all the way to Chiapas, which is in 1996. So that was very, very hard, very challenging. One of the hardest things I ever did in my life, And then, I never really went to school per se, like in the educational, academic world. My schooling was just ceremony. It was going out there with my father, picking peyote, going to Sundance, working at a job, busting tables, working construction for 4 or 5 months, and then living there at the nonprofit in Phoenix, and then quitting a job and going to a ceremony in Mexico for 4 or 5 months, coming back, doing that again, and then working, and then going. And I was doing that for like 5 years, constantly ceremony. And we get to a point where you start getting a relationship, you start building a family, you start adapting to what the elders told you, and the way they taught you about establishing roots, starting a family, being responsible, and not just, and then so little by little, through ceremony, I started sun dancing when I was 19 there in Hueco Tanks with my relatives there in El Paso, with a couple of my elders, Ocasio, who passed away, and Tracaele, and then I started sun dancing at the Little Big Medicine, and then little by little, started going to ceremony, and then even though I've always worked, because I've always worked, in the sense of 65, 70 hours a week, since the past 20 some years, but you have to adapt into ceremony, and then unfortunately, when my father passed away in 2005, he was 51, I was 27, and you kind of look around, you look to your left, look to your right, and you're kind of at a standstill where, who's going to pick up the staff, who's going to continue the ceremonies to represent what you learned, and who's going to, why should somebody else do this? And you come to a point where you have to, it's like, I know we're adults, and you have a choice, because we all have this free will, but you have to do this. It's a calling that sometimes it's overwhelming, yes, but the benefits are so blissful, in the sense of people coming in and out of your lives. So that's when I started running peyote ceremonies when I was 27 in 2006, and for the 1-year anniversary of my father's passings. So now it's been almost 18 years where I've been running peyote ceremonies, and then going to getting doctrinized with other elders, and doing ceremonies, and going to Mexico, and meeting these relatives and this relatives, and then but at the very end, it all comes back to what the elders told me. Where there are several elders, and even with old elders, even like Navajo elders, and I can remember at a extremely vivid 1997, I was at a ceremony with Leonard Crodog, and in a peyote ceremony, and then he asked me like, he goes, what tribe you from? Like, and then and being that I wasn't been around elders, and they taught me, I could have went off and said, oh, I'm this and that, vice versa, and I told him the truth. I told him I'm a Chicano, and I'm from California, and here I am, And then he's, oh, good one, nephew, good one. Then he adopted me as his nephew there and then in ceremony, So even though I'm a big believer in the ethnogenesis, in the sense of like the Seminoles, the Seminoles, a couple hundred years ago, they didn't really exist until the government forcefully got other natives, the Creek, the Cree, the Comanche, the Comanche, the Cherokee. They pretty much, sent them to the swamps of Florida to die. And they all came together, and they all put their differences aside, and they all came together with their different languages, and they created their own ceremonies. And now they are a federally recognized tribe, which is the Seminoles, but in a form of ethnogenesis. So I believe yes, we come from different individual tribes and affiliations. And you could say very easily in Mexico, just the state of Oaxaca, you have 241 different dialects, or in Michoacan, or, Sinaloa, and, all these different, places, Hidalgo and Mexico and Otomi and this and Yaqui and Sinaloa. But the reality is that we're all here, and because if we all work in the fields, and our relatives, like my own relatives, they left their own altars, they left their own cornfields, their own milpas to survive, to provide for their families. That's why I have roots in New Mexico, I have roots in California, but ultimately deep down in my heart, I'm Chicano, and that's how I deeply identify myself, even though, Choahuilteo is a state recognized tribe, which I'm affiliated with, in the state of Texas. And that's where my origins come from. But, when you ask me, who are you? I'm Chicano. I eat tacos, I eat in and out, I do this, I like the culture. This is who I am, And then so it's very, very important for me to have this dialogue, in the sense of it's very important for talking about plant-based medicines, right? And it's very important to use these different examples of, who are we as people, and who are we as indigenous people, right? And then the way it was explained to me is, okay, if you have your grandmother, and your grandmother, she's living in her home, and she's older in age, right? And you have your children, your grandchildren, they move away, they go to a different city, to a different town, different community, what have you. But there's always that one kid around the block, the Hogan down the street, that little adobe house, that little this and that, who comes over and maybe picks up her trash. Maybe it brings her flour for her pride bread. Maybe brings her some groceries, or cuts her weeds, or what have you. Okay. Well, what does she call him? Oh yeah, mijo. Oh yeah, mijita. Thank you. Thank you, son. Thank you, daughter. And then so it's up to us as people, as children of this earth. It's so important for us to come back to ceremonies, so we can have a relationship not just with our grandparents, and some of us we never had that, because they were too busy working in the fields. They were too busy working 70 hours a week, maybe because of poverty and genocide, they're, addiction and drugs, and or what have you, or, different families because of the trauma and this and that, but if you go in the deeper sense of, okay, who's our true mother? The earth. Who's our true father? The sky. So it's up to us to offer the songs, to offer the water, to offer the ceremony, to offer our time, to bring, like our grandmother, down the street, that's not blood related, but to bring her food, to bring her water, to bring her flowers, because maybe her kids at one point in time started their own lives, but we have to come back to the earth and ceremonies and be that kid down the street, be that little kid that goes around and knocks on the door and makes sure she's okay because she can't walk no more, and maybe she fell or what have you. So it's up to us to come back to ceremonies and be that children, and that's why it's so important for me to, or for everybody to share. For me, ceremonies is everything. It's everything. And then and to fight hard in the legal basis to protect medicine, peyote in this sense, but to go to Sundance and to make offerings to the tree, and even though in a broader sense, if you don't, time, vacation, and distance, and what have you, but maybe, we'll call the elder up and say, hey, you know what, I can't really make it, but you know what, hey, just call them up and so that let them know that you're thinking of them. And that's why it's so important for these talking circles and to have these Zoom meetings, so the word could be straightened out that we have a responsibility, no matter what age, because at one point in time, unfortunately, these elders are not going to be there, and we are the elders. We are the future elders. And then, just like my own story of my dad passing at a young age, we have to pick up that staff, and not within our own time schedule, the time schedule of creation. That's why it's real important. For me, it is.
Wow, that was very interesting. Thank you so much for explaining to me Chicano identity a little bit more. I know that there's a lot of people, especially in the department that I work in, Mexican American Studies, who identify as being Chicano, and just kind of wanting to clarify that definition a little bit more. Are you saying that it is a type of indigenous peoples, and they do have a responsibility, just as all indigenous peoples, to return back to ceremonial ways?
Well, the responsibility of it just kind of in the broader term, I live here in California, right? So there's a bunch of communities here within like Santa Maria, San Joaquin Valley, Oxnard, where you have a bunch of indigenous native people because of NAFTA, because of this, that, and the other, and economics, to survive. They there's the imaginary border there. They came over here and they speak their own language. They speak their own dialect from different parts of Mexico. But when their children go to school, they learn English, So ethnogenesis. Yeah. So, they're 100% native. Some of them, their parents don't know English. They don't even know Spanish, but the kids know English, the kids know Spanish, so it's through ethnogenesis. Yes, completely, because it's the same thing with the Seminoles, there's different tribes coming together and forming their own, and that's why it's good to be like Mexican American Studies program that we're talking about right now is that because hopefully because of these talking circles, these children, they could go to school, they could become academics, they could come to ceremony, and then you have so yes, to answer your question, it's a huge, humongous responsibility that they don't even know they have, but they do,
And part of the responsibility too is I feel speaking up about the issues that are happening right now with the mass migration of indigenous peoples from Central and South America here to the United States. How do you feel Chicano people should be responding or kind of participating in those conversations that are happening, and maybe even what should be the response there?
There's several branches of that tree. There's one where it's political, there's educational, there's the fact of, first of all, identifying of like identifying, looking in the mirror and recognizing and being proud of who they are, that I'm an indigenous person, but I'm not in my indigenous homeland. I'm on someone else's homeland. I'm in Chumash homeland, or other Tulare, so in Central California. I'm on someone else's ancestral homeland. But then again, if you bring it into broader terms, being that kid down the street who brings the grandma, flour and water and what have you, my grandparents are buried here in California, so that could be said easily of like, well, yeah, my ancestors are buried here too, they migrated here, because of work, and then so I believe that the word Chicano, it could be broken down into many, depends on who you ask in the sense, but it's the number one, the root of it is identifying who we are consciously. And then so with all that trauma, which I have so much gratitude and I'm so thankful for the Dene people, the Lakota people, all these other natives, native tribes that I've sundanced with, I've affiliated with, and gone to Sundance with, and sweat lodges with, where what they've taught us is such a priceless teaching in the sense of, some of us, including myself, were my grandparents were field workers, and at that point in time, and even now, the racism in Mexico of being native is taboo, right? So so because of genocide, you don't, oh wow, I'm not native, I'm this, I'm that, or in the sense of, maybe my grandmothers, because both of them were dark complected, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna marry and I want to have kids with the light complected guy, because I want to have children who are lighter than me so they can have better job opportunities, and so that still exists in Mexico. So and that bringing that over here, that carries over here too. So so it's really important for me to say, what, not only are we native, but thanks to our Dene relatives, our Lakota relatives, or I have my compadre, is Mojave, the Havapay, all these different native communities where they accept us, and then because of their trauma and their boarding schools and alcoholism and drug abuse and suicide rates, off the charts, and for us to come together in dialogue and ceremony, whether it's talking circle, whether it's, just hanging out, but to educating each other and saying, okay, you're native, I'm native, we're both native, and this, we all make, tortillas, fried bread, papillas, all this, but that's why I feel it's really, really important.
No, I really, what you said too about just being in someone else's homeland and having to acknowledge that it's not maybe quote unquote your ancestral land, although we do not know that because we made all these highways, we made all of these trails, and we have been traveling back and forth for tens of thousands of years. So, I refuse to believe that all of Turtle Island does not belong to all Indigenous peoples of this, of the Americas. With that being said, I'm Blackfeet, and I was raised in a Blackfeet home, and, my mom, she wasn't there for me. She's Navajo, and she didn't teach me any ways, because of boarding school, like how you said. So I really appreciate you touching on the fact that even though there are Native peoples here that we should be learning from, that a lot of them are processing a lot of trauma. So with that being said, we do have Mary Kay, who would like to speak right now. And I'm not sure if that's even your name or if that's just the name that's assigned to this, to your title, but if you want to just go ahead and jump on the conversation and introduce yourself.
Sure. Yes, my name is Mary. Case for my last name, Kladouris. I am Chicana, Chichimeca, Greek. I currently reside in the unceded lands of the ancestral lands of the Quiche Tongva here in LA County in California. And I do identify as a Chicana. My family, planted that seed of consciousness of who we were as people long ago. Of course, my ancestors lost their native Tonga Nahuatl because, to survive here that back then, they had to assimilate. And so I don't fault them, but in terms of certain medicines and traditions, they did hold on to that. And so, throughout my journey, it's always been political. And so, kind of lost my way as a youngster, because they call it, the urban res, so to speak, in LA, which, when I grew up, it was a multitude of different indigenous populations. Some were scattered, but because I always like to say everybody's indigenous to somewhere on Mother Earth, and we cross paths. Sometimes it's a good experience and sometimes it's not. But I think today, here and now, it's a beautiful time to be alive. I belong to, it's the intertribal Indigenous women's spiritual circle. And then, I also belong to Mishikayot, which is, for lack of a better word, equivalent to the Red Road. And many of my sisters are in the Red Road. So we come together and we teach each other. There's, like I said, they all come from different indigenous backgrounds, and we come together and we teach each other, and we experience and are invited and partake in plant medicine, be it, teo nanaka, which is, the mushrooms, or ayahuasca. I've yet to experience peyote. I've yet to experience that, but I would love to one day. And so, in terms of, we recently, as women, we constructed an inipi. It was by women for women. And so that's a beautiful thing. Of course, we had our brothers. We need their energy too. They help balance, and an elder, he guided us and taught us, and he's an elder, and he's a beautiful, beautiful, wise one. And so, on this walk, it's just just shedding things that no longer serve me, because of course, colonization and how it serves, to it's a tool so we can forget who we are, because we really are, we come from magnificence, our ancestors and whatnot. As I was on my journey, unfortunately for me, other than my elders that died early, of cancer, I learned some things very young, and then memories come when you're in ceremonies. And the last time I was in ceremony, I was crying, and my ancestors were laughing and saying, you need to stop crying. We're not in that realm, in the physical realm. We are in the spirit world, and we walk with you calling us, and nothing dies in the spirit world. So you stop tripping. And I was like laughing. I go, okay. So that was more confirmation. So, yeah, it is very, important that we reconnect in that way, because it teaches us about ourselves. It helps us to really expand, because I think, with the colonization and this Western mentality, of course, we have to, if you choose to, go through their educational system, we have to live in both worlds and, navigate through that world. But even if you have that piece of paper, you're still gonna, come across certain barriers that they, strategize to keep you, try to keep in your place, so they create this system, and, you go beyond it, and they it's hard for them to handle, because, they have tried to dumb us down and whatnot. But on this road, excuse me, okay, sorry about that. It was an incoming call. Yeah, on this spiritual road, it's taught me a lot. Like I said, when I was young, I always had this consciousness, because my family, they were political during the Chicano moratorium and the movement, and back then, because of police brutality and substandard schools, and just speaking out about it, there was a price to pay. People died to have certain what they call ethnic studies, whether the Chicano studies or African American or Native American studies. Our sisters and brothers put their lives on the line. So, for the current and future generations. And so, I chose to come here because I know my grandfather, and he's in the spirit world, but he did tell me many, many years ago, about 25 years ago, that he was Chichimeca. And so I was really, really happy to find out, like I said, I think a lot of it had to do with survival, that, they didn't use their native tongue, or they lost it. I mean, And so I've been on this, quest to dig deeper and try to find roots exactly, to his lineage or my lineage, but, they, I guess, record keeping and certain things, but I don't feel like I won't be able to make the connections. It just takes research and, just by, synchronicity, I came across the Zoom, what is it, link here. And I said, oh, I want to participate in this, because there's a couple of Chichimeca groups on Facebook, and, they exchange information and whatnot. So I think it's great, because it's, like one of my buddies, unfortunately, she was deported. Yeah, she was born in Juarez, Mexico, and lived in LA since the age of 2. But 9/11 changed the game for everybody. But what was my point with her? I just had a brain fart. But okay. So sometimes we get into a discussion where she says, well, everybody identifies as Mexica and they don't know. I said, well, you gotta kind of be open minded, because it's a starting point. It's a door that's cracking open. They want to, so you can't be so rigid and judgmental about that. It's an identity that they feel they can identify with. So we have to, be, more open minded. And I see it as a starting point when, individuals, in my group, there's individuals that are Salvadoreños, some from Nicaragua. So it's not like, it's not like so rigid that, oh no, you're not Mexican or you're not, a Chicano. So they open the doors to anybody that wants to learn indigenous practices, which are really, really beneficial to we as individuals and as a collective, as a people, because of, and no disrespect if anybody, has a different faith, but it's so empowering to come to a group that really is on this path to validating and empowering themselves, and others that are willing to come to the group and learn, so that's one of the reasons, I partake in it. It's just the way things work, it started with one connection to another connection, and it just bam and exploded. So the path is wide open, and experiencing plant medicines, and also, we've always used plant medicine, to cure ourselves and heal ourselves, to the point that it's kind of sad that they're commodifying a lot of the medicine now. The minute you have these rich brokers have the money, they start buying it in amounts so big that some of the medicine people can't even afford to purchase it anymore. And it's very annoying. You see these people that have these groups, or I always laugh where these people, oh, I took this class, I'm a shaman. I'm like, you better, whatever, it's kind of funny. And I kind of look
Hey,
at what was that?
No, just real quick before we switch topics, just to kind of get back to the Antonio part. You're talking about something that I wanted to ask Antonio about, very specifically related to our class, and that is the commercialization of peyote. I know Mary Kay was just talking about that right now, and Antonio, can you kind of talk about like why it's important that we don't just learn our ceremonies from anybody, and why we don't just buy our medicines from anywhere, and why we should be, making sure that we're running our ceremonies like in somewhat, even if we don't know the format of them, as Mary Kay was saying, like, you know, people are just taking medicine they don't even know.
Well, that's a very excellent topic, and I know some of you on this forum. I see Sean, I see my sister here, and the other people. I mean, they're PhDs. You know, even like yourself, right? Your students that became teachers, and now your students that became teachers. Even though we're always going to be students, right? But it's just like anything, and it's like anything when you're a student, and depending on what college you went to, what high school you went to, you got your degree, you got this, that. You know, you can't have that name PhD, and you know you can't put that on your handle without going to school. You know, you can't put a Dodger uniform on and try to play right field at Dodger Stadium. You're gonna get arrested. You know, things are going to happen. You know, there's consequences. So the legalization. I know that right now they're in Oakland. A couple of years ago they decriminalized it, and vice versa. And it's like a big push. And I'm a big believer. And even though I've had medicine confiscated, you know, I've had from my own home from the feds. And I've had to go through checkpoints with and without papers. You know, several times where I've had you know 2,000 or 3,000 peyote buttons, going through checkpoints and, with no paperwork, even though, yeah, I'm going to a ceremony, I'm doing this, doing that, and vice versa. But now I have the paperwork for it. Now, everything's legal, so I'm a big believer where that the commercialization of peyote is so overwhelming, not just quote unquote non-federally recognized, but even federally recognized natives. Because you might say, you know what, I'm there in the res, the economic hardship or what have you, or even down to go to Mexico. There's some medicine man, they don't have Social Security, they don't have workman's comp, they don't have nothing, they don't have housing, they don't have food stamps. All they know is ceremony, and then not knowing, someone comes up to them and says, "Hey, I'm going to offer you $2,000-3,000 to come run a ceremony," and this person's making, like, they have kids, they have this, they have that, need to drill a well, they put in their roof and a roof over their heads, and they don't have medical. They have to get loans just to take their mom and dad to the doctor for a broken leg or vice versa. So that's very tempting. But by doing that, it creates a whole different market of ceremonies, so now you have, whether you might have the roadman on the res, talking like that, real like that, and just not go to Mexico or go to Europe like that, and blah blah blah, and go to ceremony, and there's that novelty behind it. And you can't really blame them, because they have families to feed. They have this, but it all started the way I look at it. It all started, when people, without reverence, without acknowledgement, without the educational background, who went to these ceremonies or wrote a book, went on YouTube, you might have some person, native or non-native, who got permission in a right way to run these ceremonies in a bona fide ceremony the right way. They got doctrinized, but one way or another, they just kind of made a left turn, and then you come to a point, where I believe that it should be illegal. It should be, there should be gatekeepers behind the ceremony, because not just to protect the people who are there in ceremony, and to have a good guide, and to protect and to honor their prayers, and to honor, but it's about building a community. And then the flip side to it too is, the legalities of how sister was talking about, dispensaries, and having peyote everywhere, and this that. You don't want that. You don't want that, because it's hard to get medicine to begin with. It's hard to get paperwork to begin with. Took 20 some years, and had to have character letters from different tribes, from different elders. And I had a sit down interview with the DEA, and they have to go through a whole background check of who you are, what you're about. And they don't just make phone calls to elders. I've had phone calls. Hey, Antonio, this the aging came to my house, knocking on my door, asking about you. And it's about that. So I believe too that going back to ceremonies and going back to the legalities of ceremonies, I feel that being Chicano, we have to take away the entitlement away from that, because I'm this, I'm from the hood and blah blah blah. I know a little bit of Nahuatl. I learned in the book, or maybe I learned in prison, or this and that. I know this song. I'm gonna, and they go to ceremony, but who's gonna chop the wood? Who's gonna prepare the food? Who's gonna do this? And then and I've been doing this for a long time, and it's really ironic because some of them are New Agers coming early. Some of the New Agers are the ones who chop wood, who give donations, or get the nice fancy Pendleton blanket, or vice versa. And so it's like, okay, but the Chicanos, they show up late, and they show up, maybe at Sundance they show up on the last day, and I'm gonna appear this that, blah blah blah. No, it's about coming early. It's about coming early. So I feel that there should be extremely, and Chicanos, and then we have to learn that from our Huichol natives, relatives, our Navajo relatives, and all the different relatives, north and south, and how they do it. Because I've been to ceremony before where I have an elder of mine. He's a Huichol elder. I talk to his son. I talk to his cousins, and I try to I know now, but you try to pick their brain about ceremony and this and that, and they'll tell you. And they dress, they're Huichol. They dress like that. They have the hat, and they speak their language. They hardly know Spanish, and their response to you is, "I don't have permission to talk about those things. I don't have permission from my elders to talk about those things." And that's and us as Chicanos, we have to understand that, yes, we might go to the ceremony or that ceremony as a participant, but when someone comes up to us and says, "Oh, I want to do this," you know what? I don't have authorization. I could share with you about what I experienced, but I'm not going to go ahead and don't take my word for like I know something, because I don't have authorization to speak on that behalf, So it's very, very careful. That's why we have to learn about ceremonies, the ins and outs of what we can and cannot do, and what lane we're on, But hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, and Pahtli Nunez wanted to follow up. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. No, I was just, I've been resonating. Let me turn my camera. I've been resonating a lot with everything that everyone's been saying. I'm over in Tongva territory over here, and I've been on this, I guess, Red Road journey for not too long, maybe about 6-7 years or so. So for me, it's I think there's a lot of respect that needs to come into play when reconnecting to your roots, and especially when it comes to medicine and ceremony, because I think I do agree that it is kind of the common start of the root point for a lot of connecting folks with who are of Mexican background, to kind of start with the Nahuatl identity and then kind of go from there. But some folks kind of, I think, almost nationalize it sometimes to a point where they can ignore the other natives locally in the area. I've been, fortunate enough to connect with other Tongva and Chumash people, and that's something that I truly try to advocate for folks who are kind of beginning that process of reconnecting, is to, make sure, you're also branching out to other local native communities in the area, and just, being an ally to them in that sense, since, there's a lot of like, history too, like especially in LA, being Tonga area and, other local California natives and stuff like that. But, that's just been my process because, in my early reconnection, I've had, I guess, for lack of a better term, had my ass handed to me and stuff like that, from not, not necessarily knowing, and it's okay to make mistakes and in that process. So, now I feel, more, I guess, in community with other local natives, but it does take time. And I think, with the commercialization of ceremony and medicines, it's, it's becoming like an issue where, people aren't really fully understanding the roots of where it comes from, or, just doing it just so they can, in some instances, have a, psychedelic trip, I guess, or whatever. And it's like, oh no, when you go to ceremony, you have to prepare for ceremony. You have to like, mentally clear yourself, diet can matter, a lot of different things. You have to really, prepare yourself for it. It's not something you just like jump in and do.
Yeah, well, we are approaching the hour time limit here. I kind of don't want to make my class run too long on this subject. So just one last thing I kind of wanted to ask you about, Antonio, was do you believe that you can get information back through ceremony? I had a lady come up to me today. She's one of the maintenance ladies, and she brought me her daughter's ancestry.com test results. And she identifies as being Mexican. And she found out like that they're like, her daughter was 25% Indigenous American, and then had some Portugal and England. And she was just trying to ask me, she was like, if they're 25% and that means that I'm more, and I'm wondering like how I can be more, how I can know more. She had been adopted, was the other thing, was that they had a history where her mother actually gave her up to an American family in California. And I told her to go to Sweat Lodge. I was like, you should go to Sweat Lodge. But I was just kind of wondering, like, just coming from that perspective, do you think that people can rediscover who they are through ceremonies and remember?
I'm a big believer that it's all universal in the sense of just like the Sweat Lodge, for example. The Sweat Lodge, I have the church bells. I live by a Catholic church, so here's some church bells going off. I'm a big believer that wherever you go in the whole world, there's some kind of form of Sweat Lodge, meaning, yeah, there's volcanoes, volcanic rocks, there's water, there's air, the birth of life, So that being said, no one owns the patent for ceremonies. There's different caretakers. There's different guardians of plant medicine, different plant medicines, and the medicines, with mushrooms, ayahuasca, which I've never tried. I'm just focused on peyote myself. I don't smoke weed or nothing like that. So for me, there's different plant medicines for different, but I believe that if a person truly wants to come and be true to themselves, then I feel that it's all a spiritual awakening first, fundamental, right? So a person has to ask themselves to say, okay, are you a tourist? No, are you a tourist? Are you going to become the sightsee, or what's the main goal? Even though it might sound kind of abrasive when you ask someone that, but it's to the point. Why do you want to learn about this? Just because you want a picture on your wall, or this, that, or vice versa. Oh, I'm this, I'm that, conversation piece, or do you really want to learn? Because we could learn you know, and the way it was expressed to me, you know, was by a Lakota elder was, you know, when a deer sees a human in the forest, the deer does not say, oh, there's that black person, there's that Asian person, here's a Mexican person, who's this person, you know, tall, short. The deer says, oh, that's a human, you know. So the fire sees us the same way. The earth sees us the same way, you know. So the earth there say, yeah, this is a human, a different skin tone, but it's still my child, you know. So that has to be, you know, reflected back to any person, whether any descendant say, you know what, okay, yeah, you're an orphan. This is an orphaned fireplace. We're all orphans. We all have some kind of European blood in us, you know, or this blood or that blood, or runaway slaves that came from Cuba and they ended up on the coast of Mexico, or maybe some runaway slaves that ended up in, you know, they're over there in Alabama, the Choctaw, you know, and what have you, the Creek, you know. So all these different bloods. So the question has to be posed back to this person and say, are you ready for a spiritual awakening? You know, because that's what it comes down to, not just to learn in academic or spiritual awakening. That's for me, that's step number one. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, that definitely answers my question. And we have approached the hour long. I don't know how long you want to make this. Just very quick, did anybody else want to share, Laura, Amici, or Daniel? If not, that's fine too. I just kind of wanted to go back to our class real quick and thinking about what the subjects are this week. We are learning about traditional Indian medicines, teas, we talked about ceremonies, we talked about the commercialization. What do you think about the power of songs as medicine?
The power of songs is I the way it was taught, the way it was expressed to me was when you have light from a light bulb or from the sun, everything goes in waves. You have the drop of a water. If you break it down, the molecule of the water drop is a song, right? So the wind has a song. Obviously, you know, the birds have their songs and the animals have their songs, but it's really important for us as humans to sing songs to bring us back into balance, you know, because we're the only, you know, everything it has a song. So for me, when you sing a song, you know, it could be whether in a poem, whether, you know, a song literally, you know, or just someone speak, you know, someone speaking, that's your song. You know, how do you carry yourself? That's your song. You know, how do you walk? How do you stride? What's your posture? That's your song. But in the verbal sense of when you have the nouns or pronouns and and the verbs and all kinds of, once you start breaking it down, the mathematics of the song, right? And then from there you start catching the wave of the song, right? So depending on who your teacher is and what tribe affiliation and vice versa, and there's different ways of singing songs. There's a northern high pitch, there's a southern low pitch, you know, then it depends on where you're at the song, you know, but depending on the way I was taught was we all have the same tradition. We have different customs depending on our migration route, the climate, hunting grounds, plants, medicines. But we're all tied traditionally around the world. Universal is through song.
Wow, because I put that down as like a form of medicine, and I was kind of thinking like, I know that I've heard songs are medicine, but I don't really know how to explain how they are. So thank you for sharing your definition. If there is no one else who would like to speak, I would just like to say, oh, Dora, did you want to say something? Okay, sorry.
I do have a question. I'm going to take this opportunity to ask Antonio or anyone here. I'm looking at the ceremonies and the medicines that we use, and then I'm looking at the crisis that we have worldwide, not only with water, but our medicines being over harvest. And I'm not just talking about peyote, I'm talking about all kinds of different medicines, not only by, pharmaceuticals, but also by our own people. And my question, Antonio, to you as an experienced person and anyone else who has any opinion in this, can we still have ceremonies without consuming this medicine or these medicines? And can we, as Indigenous people, can we still have these ceremonies and we still can have healing and unity and see a great outcome with these ceremonies, but not partaking the medicine? And the only reason why I ask this again is because I get concerned about how much medicine do we have? Are we taking more than we should? And as a person, I won't do this to you, but as a person that conducts and holds space for ceremony, especially with this hikuri or this peyote ceremony, do you feel that we can still have the same outcomes that we have when we have ceremonies with this medicine if we don't take it, but yet we're still there in front of the fire and with the elements and maybe even one grandfather in front of us? Do you think that we can still have the same healing?
I think that's a beautiful question. I believe that it's a case by case. It's an individual case by case, right? So the biggest example, the best example I have is my mother. My mother's been to several ceremonies, and for one way or another, because her alcoholism and her family, she was so mom, she was never like that. But despite the fact that the substance and what have you, but she's brought water in TP ceremonies. She's been to my ceremonies, and she's like, you know what, mijo? Like she sits there and she's awake. She listens to everything. She's totally like conscious of what's going on. But she won't eat no medicine, but she's there and she's present. And she's like, you know what? I love going to ceremonies because it's about positivity. It's about healing. It's about coming together and we're communicating with each other, right? But then again, you're talking about a grandma who's lived life, who's forgave trespassers, who's gone through these things, right? So it's a case by case. But then again, you might have some 17 to 18-year-old kids going through this, going through that, or substance abuse, or these family traumas, my mom, my dad, and vice versa. You know what? Time to come to ceremony. The games end here. The game's in here. Yeah. We're what have you. This is it. There's no more. And it comes to a point where it's a case by case. But and then so that answers one of your questions, right? The other question is we as a community, the way I was taught was eventually, once we're all healed from our traumas, once we're all then it'll be beautiful to run a ceremony where there's no medicine involved, because just like pharmaceutical medicine in your medicine cabinet, what have you. Okay, well, you get your prescription, right? It's a kind of weird metaphor, but you don't need it no more. You're okay. You don't need it. You're fine. You're good. But people, so that's when it comes back to the abusing of medicine. So we should as a community, eventually that would be the end goal of coming to ceremony, and maybe even just having the medicine there and not eating it. It's just like the same thing of going deer hunting. Just because you see a deer doesn't mean you have to shoot it. You could just sit there and just watch it. That's it. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, Antonio, and I will add to this, and I think I agree with you as far as like, one day we'll have ceremony without medicine and then be able to practice to just activate the medicine that you already have in your body. So yes, you did answer my question. Thank you for sharing, and thank you, everyone.
There's actually,
Okay, thanks.
to add to that too, I've actually ran several ceremonies where I haven't ate no medicine at all. Maybe a cup of coffee, but I'm fine, you know. But that's just me, you know. That's just me. So, but thank you, everybody.
Just real quick, Mary Kay had a couple last things to say.
Yes, when we enter the sweat lodge, nobody is partaking in any kind of medicine whatsoever. The inipi itself, that purification ceremony, really brings up what needs to be addressed. And so, yeah, you go in there, especially my sister, she's in recovery, and she does not permit anything like that. Anyhow, she doesn't participate at all in any plant medicine. I think she has like 17 years of sobriety. So that's okay, because that's her journey. But she does, she doesn't discriminate. But when you're in her, sacred space, that she doesn't, allow it. And so out of respect, anybody and everybody, the women that do participate in her inipi, they respect that. So yeah, and they get a lot of healing out of that sweat lodge. Thank you.
Well, if there's no other question, oh, Lotta, did you want to speak again?
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Mary Kay.
Thank you, everybody. It's been an honor and a privilege to be in this circle with you all. I hope.
Yeah, why don't we all kind of end it by all just saying a couple of words, and then we can end it. We could start with you, Mary Kay.
Yes, I'd like to again just express my gratitude for Antonio sharing his wisdom and everybody sharing their wisdom. I think it was a beautiful circle, and I look forward to partaking in a circle like this again if it happens. I did put my email in the chat, and so yeah, so again, thank you so much. I feel so good, and I just want to tell everybody to have a great week, and a great weekend, and safe travels if you're traveling anywhere. Take care.
Okay, and Lotta, did you want to say some final words?
I do. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being part of this and sharing. Thank you, Minnie, for taking the time and making this happening. I really believe that we are lacking communication amongst our community, our family, our circles. We go to ceremonies and then we come out of ceremonies and then we don't see each other. And what happens between that time to the next ceremony? So we miss that maintenance phase of talking to each other, even if it's not about ceremony, but hey, this is what I witnessed the other day. What's your outlook? To be able to communicate, to be able to get ideas and perspectives from other people that are like-minded is very important. And so I thank you, Antonio, for taking the time and sharing what you know, and Mimi for putting this together. And then anyone that joined, thank you for your input. And I'm glad that I have flexibility here at work that I was able to join. So thank you again, and have a great weekend. Be safe and take care of our plants and our water, and make sure you're hydrating.
Pahtli, did you want to say a few words? Oh
yeah, sure. Yeah, just thank you for having this circle. I just found this randomly on Facebook, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I apologize, I didn't formally get to introduce myself, but my name is Pahtli, and from what I understand, my family comes from Michoacan, Mexico. So that's how like my personal journey started. But I'm always happy to meet other Indigenous folks and just connect in that way. So thank you for having this circle.
All right, and Antonio, do you want to go ahead and say a couple words and then I'll close it up?
Thank you, everybody. It's very educational. We as Chicanos, we have a big responsibility of not just learning ceremonies and what lane we're on, but maintaining that, because our children are watching, and then there's going to be a point in time where they're going to have to pick up the staff, and it's very, very important to tell them, like, just get in the car, because sometimes they're going to be asking, where are we going? No. Just get in the car. I'm the parent. We're going to go to ceremony, because there's going to be a certain point in time where they're going to be very thankful for this. And my sister, who was on this earlier, and I were very blessed to have my mother and my father, who were field workers, to show us that the beauty of our culture and the beauty of exchanging and sharing our culture, and just like the way the Navajos, the Lakota, the Huicholes, they're sharing their culture with us, but we're sharing the culture with everybody else too. And then it's about healing, coming together, and positivity. But thank you for everyone for being on this panel.
Well, just letting you all know again, this was for the traditional Indian medicines class, health, healing, and well-being. Next week on Wednesday at noon, we'll be having Dr. Wildcat share his wisdom about medicine, will teachings. But just want to go ahead and thank Antonio again for being here. This will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube. So we will be able to share this with our friends and family who weren't able to make it. Again, thank you so much. And hopefully we could do this again in the future. I'm supposed to be graduating here in December, and kind of hoping you could run a ceremony for me out here in Tucson, my graduation ceremony. And maybe if that happens, we can have a real talking circle here at the University of Arizona with a lot of other students during the fall semester. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here.